Commander Park Hyun rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the endless stream of data flowing across his screens. The night shift at Terran Defense Station Europa was usually quiet. Most days, the only signals they received were routine cargo reports and mining updates from the outer colonies. Nothing exciting ever happened during the graveyard shift. That changed at exactly 0347 hours. A sharp beep echoed through the communications bay. Park Hyun straightened in his chair and checked the incoming signal display. The source was coming from beyond the outer rim territories, somewhere in the dark space between known systems. The signal was weak and broken, cutting in and out like a dying radio transmission. "Nari, get over here," Park Hyun called to Communications Officer Lee Nari, who was organizing data files at her workstation across the room. Lee Nari hurried over, her coffee mug still in hand. She set it down and slipped into the chair next to Park Hyun. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface as she began working to clean up the signal. "It's really faint, sir," she said, frowning at the displays. "Whatever is sending this is either very far away or using very little power. Can you boost it?" "Working on it now." Lee Nari's hands danced across multiple screens at once. She adjusted filters, amplified weak frequencies, and slowly began to piece together fragments of the transmission. As the signal became clearer, both humans felt their blood run cold. The voice speaking was not human. The translator systems identified it as Villani, one of humanity's few alien allies in the galaxy. But something was terribly wrong. The voice was full of panic and desperation. "This is Elder Thane of the Villani Trade Council. Our homeworld is under attack. The Crexan Empire has broken the peace treaties. Our defense fleet is destroyed. Our planetary shields are failing. We need immediate assistance. Please, anyone who can hear this message, we are dying." The transmission repeated several more times before cutting off completely. Park Hyun and Lee Nari stared at each other in shock. The Villani were peaceful traders who had been humanity's first real friends in the galaxy. When humans had first ventured beyond Earth's solar system 23 years ago, most alien species had treated them with suspicion or outright contempt. The Villani had been different. They had welcomed human traders, shared star charts and navigation data, and treated humans as equals rather than primitive newcomers. "Are you sure the translation is correct?" Park Hyun asked. Lee Nari ran the message through the translation systems 3 more times. Each time the result was the same. The Villani homeworld was under siege by the Crexan Empire, a militaristic civilization that controlled a large portion of the galaxy's eastern spiral arm. "It's accurate, sir. The transmission is definitely from Elder Thane. Voice patterns match our database records." Park Hyun was already reaching for his communication device. "Get me Admiral Kim Jae immediately. Emergency priority." Within minutes, Admiral Kim Jae's face appeared on the main display screen. The Admiral looked tired but alert. His gray hair was slightly messy, suggesting he had been woken up from sleep. "What's the situation, Commander?" Park Hyun quickly explained about the distress signal. As he spoke, Admiral Kim Jae's expression grew more serious. When Park Hyun finished, there was a long moment of silence. "Send me everything you have on that transmission," the Admiral finally said. "I want full analysis reports within the hour." "Yes, sir." "What are your orders regarding the situation?" Admiral Kim Jae's jaw tightened. "The Villani helped us when we were nothing but confused newcomers stumbling around the galaxy. They shared their knowledge freely and never asked for anything in return except friendship. We don't abandon our friends." The connection ended, leaving Park Hyun and Lee Nari alone in the communications bay. Both of them understood what the Admiral's words meant. Humanity was going to war. Lee Nari pulled up star charts showing the location where the distress signal had originated. The Villani homeworld was deep in what had been neutral space, but according to the signal, it was now under Crexan control. "It's a long way from human territory," she observed. "At least 3 weeks travel time, even for our fastest ships." "Though, Villani might not have 3 weeks," Park Hyun replied grimly. Over the next hour, reports began flowing in from other monitoring stations across human space. The distress signal had been picked up by stations as far away as the Mars orbital platforms. and the mining colonies in the asteroid belt. The message was being repeated on multiple frequencies, growing weaker with each transmission. Park Hyun watched as Lee Nari worked to trace the signal's path through space. The data showed that the message had been sent nearly 2 days ago, meaning the Vallani homeworld had been under attack for at least that long. "Sir, I'm picking up other transmissions from Vallani territory," Lee Nari reported. "They're fragmentary, but it looks like the Crexans have attacked multiple Vallani worlds simultaneously." This was worse than they had initially thought. The Crexan Empire wasn't just attacking the Vallani homeworld. They were launching a full-scale invasion of Vallani space, probably with the goal of completely destroying the peaceful trading civilization. Park Hyun thought about his own interactions with the Vallani over the years. He had met several Vallani traders during his time serving on border patrol duties. They were gentle, curious beings who seemed genuinely interested in learning about human culture and sharing their own knowledge. The idea of such peaceful creatures being slaughtered by Crexan war machines made his stomach turn. The communication system chimed again. This time, it was Admiral Kim Jae calling back. "Commander, I need you to send out an immediate message to all fleet commanders. Emergency mobilization order. Every available ship is to report to Rally Point Proxima within 18 hours. All available ships, sir, even the civilian vessels? Every ship that can mount a weapon or carry supplies. The Crexans think they can wipe out the Vallani while humanity sits back and watches. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Park Hyun felt a chill run down his spine. He had served in the Terran Defense Forces for 15 years, but he had never seen a full fleet mobilization. The last time humanity had gone to war, it was against pirates and raiders threatening human colonies. This would be different. This would be humanity's first major conflict with a galactic power. As Admiral Kim Jae signed off, Park Hyun began sending out the mobilization orders to fleet commanders across human space. Within minutes, responses started coming back. Ship captains were acknowledging orders and preparing for immediate departure. The machinery of war was beginning to turn. Lee Nari continued monitoring for any additional transmissions from Vallani space, but the signals had gone silent. Either the Vallani had stopped transmitting, or their communication systems had been destroyed. Park Hyun looked out through the observation windows at the stars beyond Europa. Somewhere out there, the Vallani were fighting for their survival against impossible odds. Soon, humanity would be fighting beside them. The quiet night shift at Europa Station was over. The war had begun. News of the Vallani crisis spread through human space faster than wildfire. Within 6 hours of the first distress signal, every major news network was broadcasting the story. Emergency meetings were being held on every human world from Earth to the furthest colonial outposts. On Mars, Captain Yoon Da-young was eating breakfast in her quarters aboard the heavy cruiser Thunderbolt when her personal communicator started flashing red. Emergency deployment orders. She had been expecting them ever since the news broke about the Vallani attack. Captain Yoon quickly pulled on her uniform and made her way to the bridge. Her crew was already at their stations, running pre-flight checks and preparing the ship for immediate departure. The Thunderbolt was part of the 3rd Heavy Cruiser Squadron, 12 powerful warships designed to punch through enemy battle lines. "Status report," Captain Yoon called as she took her command chair. "All systems green, Captain," reported her first officer, Lieutenant Commander Han Dong-soo. "The other ships in our squadron are ready to depart on your command. Admiral Kim Jae wants us at the rally point within 16 hours. Captain Yoon nodded. 16 hours was barely enough time to make the journey to Proxima Centauri, even at maximum speed. But if it meant getting to the Vallani homeworld faster, her crew would push their engines to the breaking point. Meanwhile, in the massive shipyards, orbiting Luna, engineer Choi Min-ho was having the worst day of his career. His supervisors had just ordered him to prepare 3 experimental dreadnought prototypes for immediate combat deployment. These ships were supposed to undergo 6 more months of testing before they would be considered ready for active duty. "Sir, these ships aren't ready," Choi Min-ho argued with Admiral Park Tae-won, the shipyard commander. "We haven't finished testing the new armor systems. The main weapons haven't been properly calibrated. If we send these ships into battle now, we could lose them." Admiral Park's face was grim. Engineer Choi, the Villani don't have 6 months. They probably don't have 6 days. Get those ships ready to fight, even if they're not perfect. Choi Min-ho sighed and began issuing orders to his engineering teams. They would work around the clock to get the dreadnoughts combat ready. It wouldn't be pretty, and it wouldn't be safe, but it would have to be enough. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Cargo ship captains were volunteering their vessels for military conversion. Mining companies were offering their heavy industrial ships to carry troops and supplies. Even passenger liners were being hastily fitted with weapon systems and armor plating. What the galaxy didn't understand about humanity was that Earth had shaped them into something unique among spacefaring civilizations. While most alien species had evolved on stable, peaceful worlds with predictable weather and docile wildlife, humans came from a planet that was actively trying to kill them every single day. Dr. Han So-min understood this better than most. As the chief xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Discovery, she had spent years studying the differences between human and alien psychology. Now, as her ship prepared to join the rescue fleet, she was writing a report that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Humans are persistence predators, she typed into her analysis report. We evolved to chase our prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. Other galactic species evolved as ambush predators or grazers. This fundamental difference affects everything about how we approach conflict. Dr. Han paused in her writing as she considered the implications. Most alien species saw war as a political tool, something to be used carefully and with specific, limited goals. Humans saw war as something you did when your survival or the survival of your family was threatened. In that situation, there were no rules except winning. The Krexan Empire had made a critical error. They had attacked the Villani expecting the same kind of response they had received from other civilized species. Formal protests, diplomatic negotiations, perhaps some limited military response within accepted boundaries of galactic warfare. Instead, they had triggered something they didn't understand. They had threatened the family of a species that viewed the entire concept of abandoning your pack as literally unthinkable. On the Discovery, Captain Lee Byung-hun was explaining the human response to his Villani liaison officer, a being named Gentle Current Throughstones. I don't understand, the Villani said, their translation device rendering their musical language into flat human words. The other species we contacted for help said they would consider our request and respond through diplomatic channels. Your people are sending their entire fleet without even discussing terms. Captain Lee looked at the alien with something approaching pity. You don't understand because your species never had to survive on a world like Earth. For humans, when someone threatens our friends, we don't negotiate. We eliminate the threat. The Villani seemed confused by this explanation. Their species had evolved on a garden world with stable weather and abundant resources. Cooperation and trade had always been more successful strategies than conflict for them. The idea of a species that had learned to solve problems through violence was alien to their thinking. But as reports continued to flow in from across human space, even the Villani began to understand that something unprecedented was happening. Hundreds of human ships were converging on the rally point, not just military vessels but civilian craft that had been converted for war in a matter of hours. The human approach to warfare was already confusing their potential enemies. Intelligence reports from Krexan space showed that the Empire's military leaders were struggling to understand the human response. In previous conquests, the Krexans had always faced opponents who followed established rules of warfare. Battles happened at predetermined locations. Civilian ships stayed out of combat zones. There were accepted protocols for surrender and negotiation. Humans apparently didn't follow any of these rules. Lieutenant Commander Bae Soo-jin was supervising the conversion of civilian vessels at a supply depot near Jupiter. Cargo haulers were being fitted with missile launchers. Mining ships designed to blast apart asteroids were having their industrial equipment converted into weapons systems. This doesn't match any known military doctrine, observed Commander No Kyong-min, a Terran Defense Force officer who was helping coordinate the conversions. We're turning merchant ships into warships. Most species would consider this a violation of interstellar law. Most species don't come from death worlds. Bei Su-jin replied as she watched a cargo hauler getting fitted with armor plating. Most species never had to learn that sometimes the only way to protect what you care about is to become more dangerous than whatever is threatening it. As the human fleet continued to grow, intelligence reports began filtering back from Krexan territory. The Empire was mobilizing its own forces, but their preparations followed standard military protocols. They were assembling formal battle fleets with established command structures and predictable tactics. They were preparing to fight a civilized war against an opponent who had learned warfare from a world where civilization was a thin layer covering millions of years of predatory evolution. The Krexan Empire was about to discover why other galactic civilizations had started calling humans Deathworlders. It wasn't an insult. It was a warning. In 18 hours, the largest human military force ever assembled would depart for Volani space. They would carry with them not just weapons and ships, but something far more dangerous: the absolute certainty that they would never abandon their friends no matter what the cost. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the pack of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on the most dangerous planet in known space. The rally point near Proxima Centauri had never seen anything like it. In less than 18 hours, over 400 vessels had gathered in the empty space between stars. Military cruisers floated alongside converted cargo haulers. Sleek destroyers shared formation space with bulky mining ships that had been hastily fitted with weapon systems. Admiral Kim Jae stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive battlecruiser Defiant, and watched the continuing stream of ships arriving through hyperspace. Each flash of light brought another vessel answering humanity's call to arms. Some were military ships that had traveled from the furthest reaches of human space. Others were civilian vessels whose captains had volunteered for what everyone knew would be a dangerous mission. "Final count, Admiral," reported his aide, Commander Shinji Wu. 437 vessels of all classes. We have 12 battle cruisers, 48 heavy cruisers, 96 destroyers, and the rest are converted civilian ships. Admiral Kim nodded grimly. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled. But they would still be outnumbered when they reached Krexan space. Intelligence reports suggested the Krexan Empire had over 3,000 warships scattered across their territory. What about the experimental dreadnoughts from Luna shipyards? They're still running final checks, sir. Engineer Choi Min-ho reports they'll be ready within 6 hours. Across the fleet, ship captains were receiving their final briefings. The mission parameters were simple but terrifying. They would travel 3 weeks through hostile Krexan space to reach the Volani homeworld. There would be no possibility of retreat or reinforcement. They would either save their allies or die trying. Captain Oh Young-woo commanded the assault carrier Indomitable, one of humanity's newest ship designs. His vessel carried 200 fighter craft and was designed to support ground operations. As he reviewed the mission data, he couldn't help but notice how different human military doctrine was from galactic standards. Most species built their warships for formal fleet battles with established rules of engagement. Ships would face each other in orderly formations and exchange fire until one side achieved a decisive advantage. There were protocols for surrender, agreements about targeting civilian areas, and generally accepted limits on how much destruction was considered appropriate. Human ships were built for a different kind of warfare entirely. They were designed to keep fighting even when heavily damaged, with multiple backup systems and redundant equipment. Their weapon systems were meant to destroy enemy capability as quickly as possible, not to fight prolonged battles according to sporting rules. Lieutenant Commander Bei Su-jin was still working frantically to complete the conversion of civilian vessels. The cargo hauler New Horizon had been transformed into a mobile missile platform, carrying enough firepower to level a small city. The mining ship Deep Digger now mounted industrial cutting lasers that could slice through battleship armor. "This doesn't look like any military fleet I've ever seen," observed Captain Park In-soo, a veteran destroyer commander who was reviewing the converted civilian ships. "That's because we're not fighting a military battle," Bei Su-jin replied as she watched technicians install armor plating on a passenger liner. "We're hunting something that threatened our family. The rules are different." The difference in human thinking was becoming clear to everyone involved in the operation. While other galactic species approached warfare as an extension of politics, humans viewed it as an extension of survival. When someone threatened the pack, you eliminated the threat completely. There were no partial victories or acceptable losses when it came to protecting those under your care. Intelligence Officer SEO Tae-min was briefing squadron commanders on what they could expect when they reached Krexan space. The reports he shared painted a grim picture of Krexan military capabilities. The Krexan Empire controls over 200 star systems, he explained to the assembled officers. Their fleet doctrine emphasizes heavy battleships and overwhelming firepower. They've conquered 12 different species over the past century by using superior numbers and firepower to crush organized resistance. Captain Lim Seong-min, commander of a heavy cruiser squadron, raised his hand. What about their ground forces? Extensive but designed for occupying defeated populations rather than actual combat. The Krexans prefer to destroy enemy fleets in space and then demand surrender. Most species comply rather than face orbital bombardment of their homeworlds. And if we refuse to surrender? Seo Tae-min's expression was grim. According to our intelligence, no species has ever refused to surrender to the Krexan Empire. We don't know how they'll respond. What intelligence officer Seo Tae-min didn't mention was that Krexan intelligence was equally confused about human capabilities. Intercepted communications showed that Krexan military planners were struggling to understand what they were facing. From the Krexan perspective, the human response made no sense. When they had attacked other civilizations, the targeted species had either surrendered immediately or mounted limited defensive actions while seeking diplomatic solutions. No one had ever responded by mobilizing their entire civilization for total war. The Krexan intelligence reports described humans as irrational and unpredictable. They couldn't understand why a species would risk everything to help allies who were already defeated. In Krexan thinking, the logical response would be to write off the Villani as a lost cause and focus on protecting human territory. They didn't understand that humans had been shaped by millions of years of evolution on a world where abandoning your pack meant death. The concept of sacrificing allies for strategic advantage was literally unthinkable to human psychology. As the final ships arrived at the rally point, Admiral Kim Jae prepared to address the entire fleet. The communication would be broadcast to every ship in the formation, from the largest battlecruiser to the smallest converted cargo vessel. "Attention all vessels," Admiral Kim's voice echoed across the fleet communication channels. "Today we depart for Villani space to help our friends in their hour of greatest need. The Krexan Empire believes they can destroy peaceful civilizations while the rest of the galaxy watches in fear. They are about to learn that humanity does not abandon its allies." He paused for a moment, looking out at the massive fleet that had assembled in response to a simple distress call. "We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. We are traveling into enemy territory with no possibility of reinforcement or retreat. By every measure of military logic, this mission is impossible." Another pause. The Krexans are about to discover that humans don't care about military logic when our friends are in danger. We care about bringing our people home. All of them. The response from the fleet was immediate and overwhelming. 437 ships acknowledged their readiness to depart for what many of them knew would be a one-way mission. Within the hour, the largest human military force in history jumped to hyperspace and began the 3-week journey that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The human fleet didn't announce their arrival in Krexan space with formal declarations of war or diplomatic messages. Instead, they slipped through the outer systems like shadows, using every trick of stealth and deception that Earth's harsh evolution had taught them. Commander Ryu Min-ah led the advanced scout ships, a dozen small vessels designed for reconnaissance and infiltration. Her ship, the Whisper, was equipped with the latest human stealth technology. While other galactic species built their ships for maximum visibility and intimidation, humans had learned to hide. "Target acquired," reported her sensor operator, Ensign Ko Tai-hyung. Krexan patrol ship, heavy cruiser class, following standard patrol route 7. Commander Ryu studied the enemy vessel on her tactical display. It was 3 times the size of her scout ship and carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Under normal circumstances, engaging such a target would be suicide. But humans didn't fight under normal circumstances. "Signal the pack," Commander Ryu ordered. "Whisper 7 through Whisper 12 form hunting formation. Target is isolated and vulnerable." The 6 scout ships moved with deadly precision, approaching the Krexan vessel from multiple angles while remaining invisible to enemy sensors. They had practiced this maneuver hundreds of times, but never against a real enemy in hostile space. The attack lasted exactly 47 seconds. The human ships struck simultaneously from 6 different directions, overwhelming the Krexan vessels' defenses before it could even send a distress signal. By the time the debris stopped glowing, the scout ships had already vanished back into the darkness of space. It was the first of many such attacks. Over the following days, Krexan patrol ships began disappearing throughout their outer territories, not destroyed in glorious battles that could be analyzed and understood, but simply vanishing from all sensors and communications. The Krexan High Command initially assumed they were dealing with equipment failures or navigation errors. They were wrong. Captain Nam Hyun-soo commanded a squadron of stealth frigates that specialized in deep penetration raids. His ships would slip through Krexan sensor networks, strike supply convoys and communication posts, and disappear before enemy reinforcements could arrive. "This is how wolves hunt," he explained to his squadron commanders during a tactical briefing. "We don't challenge the strongest prey to single combat. We pick off the weak and isolated members of the herd until the entire group is vulnerable." The comparison to Earth predators was intentional. Humans had learned warfare from creatures that viewed conflict not as a sport or political tool but as a matter of survival. Every attack was designed to weaken the enemy's ability to coordinate and respond. Major Park So-ra led the first human ground assault on a Krexan supply depot located on a frozen moon in the outer system. The facility was heavily defended and considered impregnable by galactic standards. The Krexan defenders were confident that no civilized species would attempt a direct assault on such a fortified position. They had never fought Deathworlders before. The human assault team approached the facility during the moon's 30-hour night cycle, when temperatures dropped to -60 degrees Celsius. While Krexan soldiers huddled in their heated bunkers, the human troops moved across the frozen landscape wearing only basic environmental suits. "Remember," Major Park briefed her troops as they prepared to assault the facility, "we're not here to capture territory or take prisoners. We're here to eliminate the enemy's ability to supply their forces. Hit hard, hit fast, and leave nothing behind." The attack began with human snipers taking out the perimeter guards from impossible distances. Then demolition teams destroyed the facility's power generators, plunging the entire complex into darkness. Finally, assault troops stormed through the facility, systematically destroying every piece of equipment and supply cache they could find. The entire operation took less than 2 hours. By the time Krexan reinforcements arrived, they found nothing but empty buildings and scattered debris. The human assault team had vanished into the frozen wilderness, leaving behind only the smoldering ruins of what had been a critical supply hub. Similar attacks were happening throughout Krexan space. Communication relay stations went silent. Supply convoys disappeared without trace. Forward bases found their equipment destroyed and their personnel missing. The Krexan High Command finally began to understand that they weren't dealing with another civilized species. Admiral Krex Thane 9, the military commander responsible for the conquest of Villani space, called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. "We are being hunted," he announced to his assembled officers. "These humans do not fight according to any known military doctrine. They strike without warning, show no mercy to defeated enemies, and seem to view warfare as a form of predation rather than politics." His intelligence officer, Commander Krek 72, presented the latest reports from across their territory. "Our outer defenses have been completely compromised. We've lost contact with over 50 patrol ships and 40 supply installations. The humans appear to be systematically destroying our ability to coordinate fleet movements. What do our tactical analysts recommend?" "The analysts are confused, sir. Human tactics don't match any known patterns. They don't seem interested in capturing territory or forcing surrender. They simply destroy everything they encounter and disappear." Admiral Krexthane 9 studied the tactical displays showing human attack patterns. There was a cold intelligence behind the seemingly random strikes. The humans were methodically dismantling the Krexan military infrastructure, targeting not just ships and weapons but the communication networks and supply lines that held their empire together. How long before they reached the Vallani homeworld? At their current rate of advance, approximately 6 standard days. The Admiral made his decision. Recall all outer patrol fleets to the Vallani system. We will make our stand there and crush these Deathworlders in one decisive battle. It was exactly what the human fleet commanders had been hoping for. Deep in Krexan space, Admiral Kim Jae reviewed the intelligence reports from his scout ships. The enemy was reacting exactly as human military planners had predicted. Instead of adapting to human tactics, the Krexans were falling back on their standard doctrine of overwhelming firepower, concentrated in a single location. They're concentrating their entire battle fleet around the Vallani homeworld, reported intelligence officer Co. Tai-min. Latest estimates suggest over 800 Krexan warships in the system. Good, Admiral Kim replied, surprising his staff with his calm response to being outnumbered 2-1. When all the prey gathers in one place, it makes the hunt much simpler. Commander Shin Ji-woo, his aide, looked confused. Sir, how do we attack 800 enemy ships with our force? Admiral Kim smiled grimly. The same way humans have always. One battles against superior numbers. We don't fight fair and we don't give the enemy time to use their advantages. The human fleet was still 6 days away from the Vallani homeworld, but their advanced scouts were already in position around the system. Hidden in asteroid fields and behind dead moons, human observation ships were tracking every enemy vessel and analyzing Krexan fleet dispositions. The Krexan Empire believed they were preparing for a glorious final battle that would demonstrate their military superiority to the galaxy. They were actually walking into a trap designed by predators who had learned warfare on the most dangerous planet in known space. In 6 days, the Krexan fleet would discover the difference between fighting civilized opponents and facing creatures that viewed war not as politics but as hunting. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vallani home system at exactly 1100 hours, ship time. Admiral Kim Jae had timed their arrival to coincide with the Krexan fleet's shift change, when enemy crews would be at their least alert. What they found was worse than their most pessimistic projections. The Vallani homeworld hung in space like a wounded animal, its planetary defense shields flickering and failing. Massive Krexan bombardment ships floated in low orbit, their heavy weapons systematically destroying cities and industrial centers. The once beautiful world that had been humanity's first alien ally was dying. 843 enemy contacts, reported sensor operator Lieutenant Park So-young from her station on the bridge of the Defiant. They're arranged in a standard Krexan battle formation around the planet. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display, noting how the enemy fleet was positioned. The Krexans had arranged their ships in concentric circles around the Vallani homeworld, with their heaviest battleships forming an outer defensive ring and smaller vessels closer to the planet, providing orbital bombardment support. It was a textbook formation designed to repel any conventional attack. The problem was that humans didn't fight conventional battles. All ships, this is Admiral Kim, he broadcast to the entire human fleet. Operation Storm begins in 30 seconds. Remember, we're not here to defeat the enemy fleet. We're here to save our friends. Everything else is secondary. The human attack began like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of approaching in formal battle lines, the human fleet split into dozens of small groups that attacked from every possible angle simultaneously. Scout ships and converted civilian vessels struck at the outer edges of the Krexan formation, while heavy cruisers and battleships punched straight through the center. Commander Lim Da-hyun led the first wave of fighter attacks from the assault carrier Indomitable. Her squadron of 96 fighters dove straight into the heart of the Krexan formation, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would have killed members of most other species. Target the command ships first, she ordered her pilots over the combat communication channel. Cut off their ability to coordinate, and they'll start making mistakes. Human fighter craft were built for pilots who could withstand crushing acceleration, forces that would render most aliens unconscious. While Krexan fighters moved in predictable formations following standard tactical doctrine, Human pilots flew like the aerial predators their ancestors had learned to fear on Earth. The fighters struck like hawks diving on prey, appearing out of nowhere to destroy key targets before vanishing back into the chaos of battle. Within minutes, 3 Krexan command ships had been destroyed, and their fleet coordination was beginning to break down. Captain Quan Jae-ho commanded one of the Bor experimental dreadnoughts that had been rushed into service from Luna shipyards. The massive vessel was still running on jury-rigged systems and untested equipment, but it was about to demonstrate why human engineering was different from anything else in the galaxy. Instead of the energy shields that most galactic civilizations used to protect their ships, the human dreadnought relied on layers of ablative armor designed to absorb and dissipate damage. When Krexan heavy weapons struck the ship's hull, sections of armor would boil away, but the ship itself continued fighting. All weapons, target their heavy bombardment ships, Captain Quan ordered as his vessel plowed straight through the Krexan battle line. Every shot that's not hitting the planet is a victory. The dreadnought's main guns were designed around a simple human philosophy. If you need to destroy something, use enough firepower to be absolutely certain. Each shot from the ship's primary weapons carried more destructive power than some species used in entire battles. Krexan Admiral Krex Thane 9 watched in growing horror as his carefully planned defensive formation collapsed into chaos. Human ships were attacking from directions that shouldn't have been possible, using tactics that violated every known principle of space warfare. "Why are they ramming our ships?" demanded his tactical officer, Commander Krex 47. "That's not a sustainable battle strategy." The Admiral watched as a converted human cargo hauler, its hull glowing from weapon impacts, deliberately crashed into a Krexan heavy cruiser. Both ships were destroyed in the collision, but the human vessel had been heavily damaged anyway, while the Krexan ship had been intact and combat-ready. "They're not fighting to preserve their fleet," Admiral Krex Thane 9 realized with growing dread. "They're fighting to kill us, even if it costs them everything." It was a level of commitment that the Krexan Empire had never encountered before. In their previous conquests, enemy fleets had always tried to preserve their ships and minimize casualties. The humans seemed willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to destroy enemy vessels. The tide of battle turned decisively when the human fleet revealed their ultimate tactical advantage. While other species had developed weapons designed to disable enemy ships and force surrender, humans had built weapons designed to kill. Captain Oh Jung-woo's assault carrier launched its complement of marine assault craft directly at the Krexan bombardment ships threatening the Vellani homeworld. The small craft were packed with human soldiers wearing powered armor and carrying weapons designed for close combat. "Remember your briefing," Major Park Sora told her troops as their assault craft approached the enemy ships. "Krexan vessels are designed for fleet combat, not boarding actions. Their internal security is minimal because no civilized species attempts to capture enemy ships during battle." The assault craft latched onto Krexan ship hulls and began cutting through armor, plating with industrial tools converted for military use. Within minutes, human marines were fighting their way through enemy ship corridors, systematically destroying critical systems and eliminating crew members. It was a type of warfare that the Krexan Empire had never prepared for. Their ships were designed to fight other vessels at long range, not to repel boarders fighting with personal weapons in their own corridors. As the battle continued, the human tactical doctrine became clear to the surviving Krexan commanders. Every human action was designed to either save Vellani lives or kill Krexan forces. There were no attempts to capture territory, force surrenders, or achieve political objectives. The humans were fighting a war of extermination. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 human vessels," reported Commander Krex 47. "Are you certain?" "The messages are coming through standard diplomatic channels. They're offering to surrender their ships if we cease bombardment of the planet." Admiral Krex Thane 9 was confused. Standard galactic warfare protocols required him to accept surrender offers and treat prisoners according to established conventions. But something about the human messages seemed wrong. "Show me the surrender requests." As he read through the messages, the Admiral realized they weren't actually surrender offers. They were ultimatums. The humans were demanding that Krexan forces cease their attack on the Vellani homeworld and withdraw from the system. In exchange, they would allow surviving Crexan ships to retreat. "They're outnumbered and losing ships," the admiral muttered. "How can they be making demands?" The answer became clear when he looked at the tactical display. While the human fleet was taking heavy casualties, they had destroyed over half of the Crexan bombardment ships. More importantly, they had completely disrupted the systematic destruction of the Volani homeworld. For the first time in the battle, Crexan forces were taking more damage than they were inflicting. The human fleet was burning, but they were accomplishing their mission of protecting their allies. Within 6 hours of the battle's beginning, Admiral Crexthane IX made a decision that would shock the Crexan High Command. He ordered his surviving ships to withdraw from the Volani system. The humans had won their first major battle against a galactic power, not through superior numbers or better technology, but through the simple refusal to accept defeat when their friends were in danger. The silence after battle was something Admiral Kim Jae had never experienced before. For 6 hours, the space around the Volani homeworld had been filled with weapons fire, explosions, and the desperate communications of ships fighting for their lives. Now there was only the quiet hum of life support systems and the occasional status report from surviving vessels. The human fleet had paid a heavy price for victory. Of the 437 ships that had entered the battle, only 218 remained combat-capable. The rest were either destroyed or so badly damaged they would need months of repairs before they could return to service. But they had won. The Crexan siege fleet was gone, fleeing toward the outer edges of their empire. The bombardment of the Volani homeworld had stopped. Most importantly, their friends were alive. "Damage report," Admiral Kim requested from his aide, Commander Shin Ji-woo. 219 ships lost or critically damaged, approximately 40,000 casualties across the fleet. "But, sir, the Volani planetary government is reporting that over 6 million civilians survived the siege because we stopped the bombardment when we did." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. The mathematics of warfare were always brutal, but 40,000 human lives had saved 6 million Volani. By any reasonable measure, the mission had been a success. Dr. Lee Yoon-young, the fleet's chief communications officer, approached the admiral with a data pad containing preliminary reports from across the galaxy. What she had discovered would change everything. "Sir, we're receiving communications from over 40 different species across the galaxy. Word of our victory here has spread faster than our official reports." "What kind of communications?" "Requests for assistance, mostly. Species that have been hiding from Crexan expansion for decades are suddenly asking if humanity would be willing to help them defend their territories." Admiral Kim studied the list of worlds and species reaching out to humanity. Many of them were names he had never heard before, remote civilizations that had avoided contact with the galactic powers out of fear. "There's more, sir," Dr. Lee continued. "We're also receiving reports of uprisings on worlds under Crexan occupation. Apparently, news of our victory is inspiring resistance movements that have been dormant for years." This was something the human military planners had not anticipated. They had expected to fight one battle to save the Volani, and then return to human space to prepare for Crexan retaliation. Instead, their victory was triggering a galaxy-wide response against the Crexan Empire. Captain Song Min-ji, the fleet intelligence coordinator, was analyzing intercepted communications from across Crexan space. The reports painted a picture of an empire in sudden crisis. "The Crexan High Command is recalling forces from 12 different sectors to deal with internal rebellions," she reported to Admiral Kim. "Species they conquered decades ago are suddenly declaring independence and requesting human assistance." "How many worlds are we talking about?" "At least 60 star systems, possibly more. The Crexan Empire is facing the collapse of their entire outer territory." Admiral Kim realized that humanity had accomplished something far more significant than saving one ally. They had demonstrated to the galaxy that the seemingly invincible Crexan Empire could be defeated. More importantly, they had shown that there was at least one species willing to risk everything to help others. The human victory at the Volani homeworld was being interpreted across the galaxy not as a single military engagement, but as proof that the age of predatory empires was ending. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Volani cities, Human medical teams and engineers were working alongside local survivors to begin reconstruction efforts. The contrast between human behavior and typical galactic warfare was stark. Most species, after winning such a costly victory, would have demanded compensation or territorial concessions from the people they had rescued. Humans were instead using their own resources to help rebuild what the Crexans had destroyed. Commander Park Hyun, who had received the original distress call back at Europa Station, was now on the surface of the Vallani homeworld coordinating relief efforts. As he watched human soldiers sharing their rations with Vallani children, he began to understand why their victory was having such a profound impact on galactic politics. Most species fight for territory, resources, or political advantage, explained Elder Thane, the Vallani leader who had sent the original distress call. Humans are the first species we have encountered that fights simply to protect others. This fundamental difference in motivation was what made humanity unique in galactic society. While other civilizations viewed warfare as an extension of politics or economics, humans viewed it as an extension of family loyalty. When someone threatened the pack, you eliminated the threat regardless of cost or consequence. Dr. Lee Yoon-young was preparing the most important communication in human history. With Admiral Kim's approval, she was going to broadcast a message across all known galactic frequencies. The message would be addressed not to governments or military commands, but to every species in the galaxy. People of the galaxy, the message began. Today, humanity fought its first major battle against the Crexan Empire. We did not fight for conquest or glory. We fought because our friends asked for help, and humans do not abandon their friends. The message continued with a simple declaration that would reshape galactic politics. Humanity was no longer content to remain isolated in their corner of the galaxy, while others suffered under the rule of predatory empires. To any species facing oppression or aggression, know that you are not alone. The Deathworlders of Earth stand ready to help those who cannot help themselves. We ask nothing in return except friendship and the knowledge that we have made the galaxy a safer place for peaceful civilizations. The response to the broadcast was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, humanity was receiving requests for assistance from species across the galaxy. Some were asking for military help against aggressive neighbors. Others wanted technical assistance or trade agreements. All of them were offering to join what was quickly becoming known as the Terran Alliance. Back on Earth, government leaders were scrambling to understand the implications of what their military had accomplished. Overnight, humanity had gone from being a minor power on the galactic periphery to the leader of a growing alliance of species opposed to imperial expansion. The Crexan Empire, meanwhile, was facing the collapse of everything they had built over centuries of conquest. Their military doctrine was based on the assumption that other species would eventually submit to superior force. They had no strategies for dealing with opponents who would rather die than surrender, or allies who would risk everything to help each other. Admiral Crex Thane IX, the commander who had led the failed defense of the Vallani system, was reporting to the Crexan High Command with recommendations that his superiors found difficult to accept. We cannot defeat humanity using conventional warfare, he told the assembled leadership. They do not fight according to any rational military doctrine. They are willing to accept casualties that would cripple any civilized military force, and they seem to view warfare as a form of extinction-level conflict rather than politics. Are you suggesting we negotiate with these Deathworlders? I am suggesting that we avoid further conflict with them entirely. Every engagement with human forces has resulted in them gaining new allies and us losing territory. They are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to make it impossible for us to conquer anyone else. It was a strategy the Crexan Empire had no defense against. Their entire civilization was built on the conquest and exploitation of weaker species. If they could no longer expand through military force, their empire would eventually collapse from internal pressures. As the human fleet prepared to depart the Vallani system, Admiral Kim Jae reflected on what they had accomplished. They had saved their friends, but they had also started something much larger. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. The age of predatory empires was ending. The age of the Deathworlder Alliance was beginning. Commander Park Hyun, back aboard the communication station at Europa, was monitoring the flood of messages still arriving from across the galaxy. Each one represented another species choosing hope over fear, choosing to stand with humanity against the forces that had kept them oppressed. The distress call that had started everything was now being answered by an entire galaxy of civilizations, who had learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can face is not a superior enemy, but prey that has learned to hunt back. Humanity had lit a fuse, and the explosion was reshaping the stars themselves.